Welcome to this week's session of Prepare for the Fair series for spring 2021. This is the last session in Rev Up Your Resume series called Reviewing Your Document. I'm Heather Rickrell. I work in EWS Career Services. Today we're going to be talking about readability, consistency, and content, and sort of how you can look at your document to see if you've got these three areas covered. So, what makes a resume readable? The first thing is that a resume needs to have a good balance of white space and page use. That has a lot to do with edges and the troughs that are created within the document. The name block is simple, it's not fancy, it doesn't have scroll work around it, it's not a text box, things like that. It's got easy to read font in all black, it's not any smaller than size 11, and you're not changing font sizes throughout it. And there's a proper use of italics. There's only one level of bullets, and the section headers are clear and easy to find. So this screenshot illustrates some examples of readability issues. Notice how this resume is left page heavy. I've taken out the name block here, but it's left page heavy, right? Everything starts on the left. It looks just like a list, not like a resume, really. The section headers are rather hard to find. They are in bigger font, but they're hard to find. So something like underlining or putting them in all caps and underlining or something like that would be helpful. It's hard to tell. It's hard to find the dates. It's hard to find any information really because everything's just all on the same level. Doesn't draw the eye out to the right side of the page. Just nothing here is very easy to find. And to me, it looks like this font might be just a tad small. The other piece is it doesn't tell you what the person did, right? So you don't see any bullet statements. What readable means for ATS. Now, remember, we've talked about ATS before. That's applicant tracking systems. Those are the robots that look over resumes before a human ever gets to see them. So we need to think about ATS all the time because probably about 90 to 95% of employers are using these systems. The resume should not be done in a template. Remember, that introduces all sorts of problems, particularly the digital code, but also they tend to use things like tables, text boxes, graphics, columns, things like that that don't work. So you want to make sure that your resume has none of the following. So don't put shapes in there. That includes lines and text boxes that don't originate from the font or paragraph menus in Word. No images, no photos, clip art, word art, those sorts of things cannot be read by ATS. No tables, no columns. The reason for no tables and columns is because ATS will read your document from left to right all on one line and then it will go to the next line. So it doesn't read down and then up like columns and down and up, or maybe down and over like a table would. You don't want your name block or any other info in the header or footer because the applicant tracking system won't find it. It won't read it. So if your resume does go through, it won't have a name or any contact info on it. You do want to make sure that you submit your resume always as a PDF, but not a corrupted PDF. There's one way to test your PDF. Pretty simple. Can you copy and paste from the PDF into a Word as text? If the answer is yes and it comes through as text, it's fine. It's not corrupted. If it pastes as an image, your PDF is corrupted. So then it means that you probably need to go back to your original Word document, save it as a PDF, and things should be okay. You want to make sure that you're not using a template. So I know I mentioned that just a little bit ago, and I've mentioned it in weeks past, but this is what I mean. Going to Word, clicking on New, clicking on Resumes and Cover Letters. Just looking at a couple of these here, some issues that they have here is columns. That's not going to work. Image is not going to work. This graphic is not going to work. Not to mention the fact that this is too much white space around it. So don't use templates. The next thing is that consistency is key. You want to use consistent font and font size. So it doesn't really work very well to be changing fonts and font sizes. The only thing that's okay as far as font size goes is your name should be bigger in font size, and you might put your section headers in larger font, but you certainly don't have to. For date format, you definitely want to double check your grad date with the rest of the resume. It's pretty common for me to see May to May 2021 with May written out, and then on the rest of the resume I'll see something like 521 to whatever. So you're switching formats. That's not consistent. So you definitely, that's the one that we need to check the most. Date placement. Are the dates of employment or involvement consistent and easy to find? So a lot of times what I'll encourage students to do is to kick the dates all the way out to the right side of the document. And that really helps the employer see how much experience exactly does a person have. Okay. It does also help to draw the I out to the right side of the page. You never need to use I or my in a resume, so you shouldn't have it in one place and not in the other because you shouldn't have it at all. Another reason you don't need I or my is because there should be no complete sentences and no periods at the end of duty statements. That's one that happens pretty commonly. I'll often see a period here or there. Don't need them. Consistent spacing in every aspect of the resume. So between sections, between lines, between elements, and then in the margins. This will give us some idea of what I mean. So if we look at the very top here, there's consistent spacing around these vertical lines, so one space. Okay, the headers are all very consistent with the line all the way out to the right margin, and you can see that down the right side. The spacing after is consistent. You can see that. Right, there's only one level of bullets here, so that's good. There are no periods at the end. Dates are consistent, written out and kicked all the way to the right side. And then as far as um, the bulleted points go, these are all written in past tense. They have strong action verbs in past tense with no use of the ing form, and the person also does not write responsible for in the at the beginning of the bulleted statement. So this is a good example of consistency, and it looks like the borders are the same on both sides. It's very readable. There's a trough here, same amount of space here. So the student paid really good attention to consistency. To the next one here. As far as content goes, a lot of people think that what content goes on the resume is a guessing game. It really shouldn't be. You are supposed to use the job announcement or position description for keywords, along with what skills, that should say skills there, knowledge and experience the employer is looking for. Now, if the job announcement or the position description that you see online is really short or it doesn't give you much, you might be able to go onto the website of that company or organization and see if you can get any more information. The other thing you can do is you can use LinkedIn to look at other job announcements, like in the same field or with the same title, to see, or you can see what other people in that role have listed on their profiles as far as skills, knowledge, and experience. And that can be really helpful for you to see what they do and what they've done. You want to write those core or foundational skills into your duty statements. So those are things like your basic technology use, communication via written and verbal formats, problem solving, critical analysis, all of those sorts of things. You want to write those into the duty statements. And then you definitely want to quantify whenever you can. So numbers, even if they're estimates, are really good. And you want to make sure that you feature your accomplishments. So don't just write what you did, write about your successes and your accomplishments. So writing strong duty statements is the key to giving your content the context it needs. I know I used this slide in a previous session in the series, but it's so important I'm pulling it into this session. So it's a really critical piece in getting noticed by the employers. That's why the content is so important. This is where decisions are made about whether or not you get an interview, and that's what your resume is all about. So that context is aided by beginning each duty statement with a strong action verb, and we showed that in the resume example a couple slides back. There are a couple of additional resources here, writing bulleted duty statements and action verbs that can be very helpful to you. So if you're ready to work on your resume, a really great place to start and keep moving on your resume is with the resume formatting suggestions document on the Career Services website. You can see that address here. And that's it for the Rev Up Your Resume series. This is the third and final session. Be sure to check out our other Prepare for the Fair series. You can find them through the events section in Handshake and the Career Services YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining me this week. Take care.